Hello, my name is Steve Russell. It is April 6th, 2025, and we are located at the Randell Research Center in Bokeelia, Florida, which is on Pine Island. The Randell Research Center is a program of the Florida Museum of Natural History. Today I will be recording a tour being given by Kevin Lollar, who is a tour guide here at Randell. The tour will cover in part the Calusa people who lived and thrived here where we are standing for many hundreds of years.
Alrighty, my name's Kevin, and I'm going to be giving you a tour of this place. I'm going to start with an archaeological anecdote, personal anecdote. I moved to Southwest Florida, Lee County in March of 1990, so that's 35 years ago. And I moved here to be the science reporter for the local newspaper, the News Press. And in 1992, in April, I got a phone call from Chuck Blanchard. He's an archaeologist, and he said that University of Florida was going to be having an event out here at Pineland called Year of the Indian 2. The original Year of the Indian had been in 1989, and this would be the same kind of thing. PhDs and grad students and undergraduate students and trained volunteers come out and they open up a bunch of pits and they do really serious archaeology. And Blanchard said that for the first Year of the Indian, the News Press, my newspaper, sent out a reporter and a photographer. They spent an hour and a half out here talking to folks, taking photographs, and went back and wrote a story. And Blanchard said, "Do you want to do that this time?" And I said, "I got a better idea. Train me to be a volunteer. I'll get down in a pit and I'll work as an archaeologist and I'll write from that point of view." He said, "Great idea." My editor said, "Great idea." So I did that. They trained me up and they put me in a pit. And the pit was 2 meters by 3 meters, or 6 square meters. And they divided into 3 1-meter pits with a string going down long ways and then 2 strings going this way. They put me in one of the middle pits, and next to me in the middle pit was a man named Mitchell Hope. And this guy was one of these really brilliant amateurs, knew as much about archaeology as any PhD, right? So we're working away, and I really quickly came to understand that archaeology is not what you see in Indiana Jones movies. We're not looking for the Holy Grail. We're not looking for the Lost Ark of the Covenant. We're looking for little things, small things, anything of archaeological importance. Okay? And you don't get a bullwhip, you don't get a 45 caliber pistol, you get a garden trowel and a dustpan, and you scrape away at what you call the overburden, the stuff that's there. And that can be muck, can be mud, it can be sand. For us, it is packed shell. It's like digging out in that parking lot, right? So, and what you're doing is you're scraping away and you're looking for, artifacts or pieces of broken pottery, anything that might tell us something about the people who lived here. So I'm scraping away, and about the 4th day, I get out of the pit and I'm getting a drink of water, and I'm looking over there, and there's Mitchell Hope, and he's on his knees in his pit, and this is the 4th day, and we're like this deep, hard work. He's looking across the line into my pit. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? Why is he looking? And so I'm watching him, and he's looking over, and he's kind of looking around. And finally, he reaches over and starts pushing little dirt and shells away. And he starts wiggling something, and he pulls up this absolutely beautiful stone cutting tool. I mean, it was perfect. This is a 1,500-year-old artifact. It looked like a flint knapper had just made it. And he holds this thing up and says, "Look at here." And everybody said, "Way to go, Mitch." And the photographer for the newspaper going, click, 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 take a picture of him. This is a picture of Mitch and stone cutting tool that he found in my pit. And I said,
"That's cool." Yep.
I wish the picture could show how absolutely beautiful that thing is. Did you get a chance to see it? And so I'm standing there, and Mitch has got my thing up in the air, and I say, "Mitch, that was in my pit. I should have found that."
Stay in your lane.
And yes, exactly. And Mitch says, and here's the punchline right here. Mitch says, "Son, in archaeology, it's not what you find, it's what you find out." You could find this very same thing in a hayfield in southwest Missouri. You take it to an archaeologist and you say, hey, why don't you study this? You say, no, take it home, put it in a frame. We can't do anything with it. There's no context. We don't know where this came from. Okay? Some Washoe Indian in Oregon could have made this and dropped it, and some kid in 1900 found it out there in Oregon, and he sent it to his brother or his cousin or his uncle in Chicago, and he sent it to a guy in Missouri who dropped it in a hayfield. But if you find something in context, you find something where the people left it, and it tells you something about the people, that's when you're doing archaeology. Okay? And that's what we do out here at the Randell Research Center. So we're going to walk around and talk about some of the things we've been finding and finding out about the Calusa Indians. So if you follow me, go this way. Okay, everything we know about the Calusa comes from two sources. You got the historical record and you got the archaeological record. The historical record begins in the 16th century when the Spanish got here. The archaeological record begins in 1895 when a man from the Smithsonian named Cushing came here, and he went also down to Key Marco, down in the 10,000 Islands. The archaeological record tells us that the first people settled here at about 50 AD. The Calusa got here about 500 AD. We don't know who the Calusa were or where they came from. Right? They might have been the people who were here at 50, and they simply were the same people, and the Spanish got here and they said, well, who are you? And we're the Calusa, the same people. They might have been people who paddled down the coast or up the coast or came over from the mainland just looking for a place to live, and they got here and they said, hey, this is nice, and they killed all these people or ran them off or said, can we marry in with you? Okay. But in any case, the Calusa, as we know the Calusa, were here at 500 AD. At about 800 AD, they started building mounds out of shell. These people have been here for a long time, and 750 years, and they've been eating a lot of mollusks. There's a lot of shell lying around, so they started stacking them up to build mounds. And by the time the Spanish got here, you had a city.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this is from Cushing's drawings. Okay, so you see the little arrow down in the corner?
Yep.
Okay, that points north, which is roughly that way. Okay, now that mound used to stretch 55 yards farther out that way and 85 yards going this way. Most of it's gone.
Road base, probably.
Road bays, filling wetlands, all of that. Okay, you see these features that look like Twinkies?
Yep.
Little Twinkie features?
Yep.
All right, that is where that house is. This mound is 30 feet tall. There used to be a 30-foot tall mound there where that house is. Right? This photo, or this picture, shows the cacique. The head Calusa was called the cacique. He is sitting on that mound, and right over here is that mound, all made of shell. That mound would have been as tall as that house is, and as wide as that house is, and it would have stretched 100 yards, the size of a football field. Okay, that's a lot of shells stacking up. And then next to it is another Twinkie looking mound, okay, same size. And then all these other smaller mounds here, all made of shell. Okay, some of them are taller than others. This one here is this little tiny mound next to the big trapezoid mound.
Yep.
And it was probably lower. But anyhow, you had all these mounds made of shell. And then these round mounds, those are made of sand. Those are the burial mounds. They were both about an acre and a half at the base, and they were 30 feet tall, and they sat in big man-made lakes. The Calusa dug up all this sand and stacked it up to make burial mounds. Okay, it's a lot easier to bury somebody in sand than it is to bury them in shell. This mound right here is called Smith Mound, and it's on our property. This other mound is Adams Mound. It's not on our property, it's over that way, and there's actually a house built on what used to be the burial mound, which is kind of scary to me. see this thing looks like a kidney? Okay, that's another man-made wet lake. It's a water feature. And these square features here, okay, we call those water courts. Those are also man-made water features. Anybody want to guess what those square things are for? Take a shot. See, that's a great guess because just recently, do you know where Mound Key is down in Estero Bay? Okay, that was the Calusa capital. Just recently, the University of Florida, Bill Marquardt, and people from the University of Georgia, Victor Thompson, determined, okay, for years they've been seeing this, this mound's been out there and they've been studying it, but they've noticed these features coming out from the mounds, like walls under the water, okay? And they finally decided, let's just look into these, go out there at a bunch of low tides and figure it out. And they determined that these two big places that were enclosed by these shell walls, they were just about the size of a football field each. Those were fish pens. And what the Calusa would do would be get out in the water with the big mullet runs and chase the mullet in there and then close the gate. And if it's too windy to go out fishing, they'd throw a cast net and you got your mullet right there. We don't think that they would have done that here because you couldn't get the mullet up this little, the only way to get up there is this little stream right here, okay? So, but it's possible, and this is my own idea, it's possible that the Calusa could have gone out there. They had a whole lot of shells, right? Shellfish. They could go out there on a nice day and pick up oysters and clams and whelks and conchs and bring them back and put them in here. Yep. And then if it's a lousy day, they can just go here to pick them up.
Like holding pens.
Like holding pens for these things, okay? But we don't know for sure. But what we are pretty sure of, these are canoe parking lots. All right? The Calusa lived and died by the canoe. Right? And they didn't want to, right, out here, this is all Pine Island Sound out here. You don't want to be out there fishing all day. Come home, bring your gear in, bring your catch in, and just leave your canoe out there because the tide comes in or something, wind blows away or, some jerk kid living on a different island comes and steals your canoe, all right? So you park it in here. This long feature down the middle of the whole thing, okay, that is the Grand Canal, a 2.5-mile canal that the Calusa dug all the way across the island from right here over to Matlacha Pass. And we'll get to that later. We'll reach a point where I'll ask you if you want to talk about that, and if you do, we will. If you don't, we'll just, move on because it takes a little while to discuss it. Anyway, so this is what the people of what we call Pineland lived at the time that the Spanish got here. The Calusa called this place Tampa. This is the original Tampa. If you look at old maps, 16th, 17th century maps, clearly marked Tampa. And Charlotte Harbor, you just see it has a B period de Tampa. The B stands for Bahia, Bay of Tampa, Tampa Bay. This is Tampa Bay out there. This is Tampa right here. But then they got confused and they moved Tampa Bay up there. This is the second most important city in the Calusa domain. The capital is down at Mound Key. Okay? And the Calusa called that place Kalos. Now, a lot of indigenous people in North America call themselves the people of the forest or the people of the river, or the Comanches just call themselves the people. Kalos in the Calusa language means fierce people. Okay, the Calusa called themselves, they didn't call themselves the people of the bay. Yeah, we're the fierce people because they were the fierce people. They dominated all of South Florida. The Calusa domain stretched from right across Charlotte Harbor, where Cape Hayes is, right? There's a big complex there called Big Mound Key. Stretched from there down through here all the way to the 10,000 Islands. It's like 70 miles, and it's all on the estuary. Every one of the 50 to 60 settlements was on an estuary. Okay? So it's not a very big area. And the Calusa had 20,000 people, probably as a population. 500 to 1,000 lived here, but 20,000 people total. With that population in that area, they dominated all of South Florida. That means they demanded tribute from all these other people, from the Ice Indians up in Cape Canaveral, all the way down through the Hobe and the Tequesta, and the Miami Indians in the middle of the state, down through the Keys, where the Gurungumbi lived. All these people had to pay tribute to the Calusa, all right? And they don't want to be like talking down to you, but gotta make sure we all know the difference between trade and tribute. Trade, I give you something, you give me something back. Tribute, you give me something, I don't give you anything. I just won't burn your village down and kill you. But at the same time, if you paying us tribute, if, say, the Mayaca Indians from farther north come down and attack the Ayas Indians, then the Calusa will go over and fight them. Okay? So they're protecting them as well as collecting tribute. This is the state of events when the Spanish got here in 1513. And the head Spaniard of that group was Juan Ponce de León. So he shows up, and the Calusa didn't really welcome him too well. They attacked him. Okay? One day, warriors in 20 canoes attacked the ships, and a handful of Calusa were killed, and one Spaniard was killed. But then the next day, Calusa in 80 canoes showed up and attacked them. Right? And these were the Spanish called them, well, like war canoes. They were shielded canoes. Okay, they had shields built into them. So the Calusa attacked. They had this all-day fight, and nobody got hurt. The reason for that is the historians say the Calusa realized that, okay, the Calusa are the baddest guys around. They dominated everybody, so they're paddling out there. We're going to kick these guys on out. But then all these big noises start going off, and your guy next to you gets a big bloody hole in his chest because they got guns. And they also got crossbows, which shoot farther than the Calusa bows. So the Calusa stayed back on this particular fight. But the point is, and this is a very important point, the Calusa hated the Spanish before the Spanish ever even got here. And why is that? Because of Columbus. All right? Columbus comes to the New World where people have been living for like 20,000 years, comes to the New World, sets up camp at what he called Hispaniola, which is now the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And he made two big discoveries. One, the people who live there, the Taino, don't have any weapons. They don't have an army. They are simply farmers and fishermen. They didn't fight anybody. They all got along. They also had gold in the hills. Okay. Columbus says, this is great for me, and so he enslaves the whole population. Everybody over the age of 14 became a slave. And most of them he put to work in the mines, and he instituted a gold quota by which every 3 months, every person working in the gold mines had to produce for the Spanish a certain amount of gold. It wasn't very much, like 2 to 3 ounces. But if you didn't bring it in, let's say you're a 14-year-old boy or a girl, or a 70-year-old man or a woman, you didn't bring the gold in, the Spanish chopped your hands off. Okay? And if you bled to death, that's okay. That serves as a lesson to everybody else. Columbus also started sex slavery, buying and selling women and girls to each other. And torture and murder and rape just became kind of entertainment for the Spanish. That's what they did. Then in 1511, the Spanish moved over to Cuba, and the atrocities they committed over there were just horrendous. And I used to rattle off a few of them, but it just, I got tired of doing it, and a lot of people said, I don't want to hear that. So anyway, important point is, this is not revisionist history. This is not a bunch of modern history professors saying, oh, let's make up some stuff to make us feel bad about being, Europeans. This was all written down by a priest who was there, a Catholic priest named Bartolome de las Casas. So if you want to read about what they did, look up Bartolome de las Casas. So anyway, the point is, some of these Taino got tired of the treatment, and so they left Cuba, paddled across the Florida Straits to Florida, ended up with the Calusa, and said, if these guys show up here, these white guys in these big ships, don't let them in. They will mess up your country. And so that's why the Calusa attacked them. So they have these two fights with Juan Ponce de León. He leaves. 4 years later, a man named Cordoba, another conquistador, shows up, and the Calusa attack him. 4 years after that, Juan Ponce comes back to Florida. He's got a contract from the King of Spain to be the governor of Florida. And so he's going to settle this place. And the historian, 16th century Spanish historian Oviedo tells us that he brought 200 people, 50 horses, beef cattle, pigs and goats, geese and chickens, and a whole bunch of seeds. They're going to be a farming community. They're going to make Florida this nice big farming colony. Right? So, the problem with that is, according to Oviedo, the Calusa are not like the Taino. The Calusa have a standing army. The Taino didn't. Right? And he also says about the Calusa, they are very harsh and very savage, and warlike and ferocious and indomitable, and unaccustomed to quietude. These are not people who are going to just sit down and quietly take this from these people. He also said, and this is really important, they are unaccustomed to abandoning their liberty to the discretion and foreign will of other men. So you got Juan Ponce, he's building his fort, building houses, maybe even starting to plant seeds, and here come the Calusa. They're not going to let these guys stay. Okay? And they completely overwhelmed the Spanish. Now remember, that last fight they had, the Calusa stayed out of range, so they wouldn't get hurt. My guess is that when they were fighting them back then, maybe they're saying, if we just make a show that we're not going to let them in, they'll go away and they won't come back. But this time they get here and they're going to stay. They're building a place. So Calusa said, we got to stop this. And the first fight, you had 80 canoes. I don't know how many people that would be. Maybe, a couple hundred, maybe 300, maybe 400. This would have been the whole Calusa army, I'm betting. Okay. The Calusa population was about 20,000. We don't know how big the army was. Let's say the army was 10% of their population. That's 2,000 people, right? Or if it's 5%, that's 1,000 people. You got 200 Spaniards, and not all of them are soldiers. You got carpenters, you got farmers, you got blacksmiths, and I don't know, Oviedo didn't say if there's any women, but you got to have women if you got to have a colony, right? So how many people, how many soldiers did they have? Half of them, maybe 100? So let's say you got 1,000 Calusa and 100 soldiers. Who's going to win that one? These guys got, firearms. Does anybody remember the band from the 60s called The Doors? Yeah. Remember them? Okay. You remember the song 5 to 1? It was on their, I think, their third album. There's a line in there that says, they've got the guns, but we've got the numbers. We're going to win. Yeah, we're taking over. Come on. And so they did. All right. The Calusa just roared in on them and just pounded them. And the Spanish historian Lopez de Gomera says that the Calusa killed plenty of Spanish. We don't know how many that is, but plenty, all right? And then Oviedo, the historian, says the Spanish killed twice as many Calusa. So the Calusa were taking it. They were getting killed, suffering casualties, but they weren't going to quit. They got to get these guys out of here. One Calusa actually shot Juan Ponce de León with an arrow, right? And the Spanish said, we got to go. We got to get out of here. They got back in their ships. They went back to Cuba, and that's where Juan Ponce's wound became infected, and he died. The Calusa, our Calusa, some of the people who lived here at Tampa, killed Juan Ponce de León. That, to me, is an important historical fact. Yes, sir?
Is this where the battle happened?
We don't know. We're thinking it's maybe closer to the mouth of the river, because that'd be, you set up your place on a river. Lots of cities are on rivers, and because you got access to the inland, but we just really don't know. That's one of the problems, right? So after this, the Spanish don't come back to Calusa territory for 45 years. 3 other expeditions left Cuba and traveled up north of Tampa Bay, the other Tampa Bay, but they didn't come here because these guys, Calusa, fierce people.